Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Gian. Welcome to another episode of FMA Source. Today, I just wanted to have a quick word about how I personally evaluate knives. Um, I should probably preempt this by saying this is my opinion. It does not reflect everybody's opinion. I like my opinions, as you can probably tell. And I like sharing my opinions with you. So today, we're going to talk about what I personally like to consider in evaluating the knives that I enjoy owning. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what I perceive, in my opinion, to be the wrong way to evaluate a knife. First and foremost, the price needs to be right. Um, Actually, maybe we shouldn't talk about price right away because some of the things that I'm going to be mentioning, some of the things that actually I pay attention to, and the things that I consider when evaluating a knife may play a role um, in in the price. I'm going to show some knives first of all. One of my favorite folders is this folder right here. Oh, you guys didn't see the cool way that I flicked that out? It's gonna very cool. So this is one of my favorite knives, folder or fixed. This is the Bastinelli red folder. Just a fantastic blade. I love how it looks. That's number one. I love how it feels. I love the material that it's made from. You know, when I was talking with Bastian, he's really big into talking about the connection between man and women, but mankind, and blades, and that deep connection over time. It's got to be in our DNA, man. It's got to be in our DNA. We got a quick question here, real quick from JTR. What do you think about carrying a concealed fixed blade? I personally, that's a great question. Fantastic question. I like it. If I were to carry a blade for protection, it would be a fixed blade, and it would be under very specific conditions. I don't actually carry a blade with me every day. It's not part of my EDC. You know, I live in a relatively safe place, quite restrictive when it comes to weaponry. So yeah, I don't. But I do travel, and I do travel to some places that aren't as safe as where I live. And so in those instances, I carry a fixed blade. I carry a fixed blade for sure, for sure. And one of the, I mean, the primary consideration is this whole opening thing, right? Like in the past, and still, I'm a big fan of folding knives, right? And not to diminish their ability to be used as a self defense tool, but for the most part, if it's a true self defense condition, you don't get to choose the parameters that they happen under, right? And so one less thing to worry about, because deployment is a huge issue in Filipino martial arts. For some reason, deployment is one of the most undertrained yet super important elements in the Filipino martial arts. Everyone talks about, oh, we do train deployment. Honestly, the sophistication that FMA applies to something as simple as an angle one, we should apply that same level of sophistication to something as critically important as deployment. It almost seems as if we're preparing ourselves for conditions where we have the jump, where our situational awareness is 100% on point, where we can be predictive about the nature of how violence escalates, and we're going to have the knife in our hand, and so we're going to work from there. So deployment training, super duper important. That's why I'm a huge proponent of training knives. I love training knives specific to the live blade that you're using. But more than that, I love training knives that represent a broad scope of knives that we may just come across. Okay. So thank you for bringing that up. JTR, super important. So now we're going to get back into evaluating a knife. Like when we look at a knife, I know some people, and there are some very famous videos out there of, fantasy knife play murdery boys who go into like a gun shop and pick up a knife, and all of a sudden they're like, Like they're visualizing like getting it into somebody's throat and twisting it and then slashing out. Um, some people are like, "Hey, you got to have a blood groove." You guys know what a blood groove is on a knife? It's more prevalent in hunting knives where you see some sort of an indentation or a groove within the blade, and it's supposedly to make cutting through flesh easier because it disperses the blood so it doesn't create that kind of a suction friction. So some people are really big into blood grooves when it comes to a defensive knife. I think that whole thing is absolutely silly. For the most part, 99.9% of your use for any knife that you buy is going to be for fun or it's going to be for utility. You're going to carve a stick, you're going to cut an apple, you're going to whittle a branch, you're going to open some boxes. So, in that respect, some knives are just like way too overkill. And maybe it's not the knife itself, but it's in how it's marketed, right? So when a knife is marketed for a defensive purpose, there's a specific kind of tone and language that I appreciate more than the, well, you see the serrations on this blade, it's gonna make cutting through flesh so much easier, and when you gotta tear that out, it's like it's just dumb, in my opinion. It's just a lot of like ridiculousness, and I don't know. But what I personally like to look at in a knife is its ergonomics, right? And ergonomics is just how well it feels when I'm holding it. That's all. And sometimes that could be something completely just artistic. Like I love how this makes me feel, or this knife feels like a primitive weapon, as is the case with this blackthorn. I keep mistaking it, blackhorn or blackthorn custom. So this is a custom knife, right? I don't like this knife for its self-defense capabilities. I just don't. Even though, yeah, it is. It's capable of being a self-defense knife. The reason I love this knife is because the knife maker contacted me. We have a relationship. I love his mentality. I love his creativity. I love his purpose, right? I love the reason he makes knives and the way he makes knives, right? Very, very spiritual, very tribal. I love his vibe. He's got tribal tattoos like I do. So I have a connection. I feel like I have a connection to the person who made this knife. And that's why I love it. That's the primary reason why I love it. Secondarily, I know I said primarily before, I kind of like how it feels. These things, right? They may not fit everybody's hand perfectly the way it fits mine. And even then, I can feel bumps, you know? I can feel that it isn't exactly perfect for me. And I love that imperfection about it. I love it because it's unique. It's one of a kind. There's only one just like this in the whole world. And that's the number one factor for me. My connection to the blade maker. So often, I would get to know that blade maker. I'd like to interview them. I like to see what their process is, what their motivations are for making a blade. And I think that's really cool. I love blades for the material that they're made. I'm a dude, man. Like I love shiny things, right? I love a good piece of steel. I love the fact that these handles are made from all sorts of different interesting materials that have stories and a life of their own. You know, you hear people say, I that handle is made from the antler of the first deer that my grandfather ever killed. And maybe the knife looks like a piece of shit by other people's standards, but when I hear a story like that, I think for me, like that's the number one thing. Knives that have a history, knives that have a story behind it. Function, of course, right? Like, I got some people who follow this channel just so that they can say some shit in their private gossip circles, these little FMA circles. And maybe I'll get ragged on this, right? But I don't really look at a knife for its ability to kill. I mean, for God's sake, something like 80%. I'm gonna make up a statistic here. Something like 80% of knives that are used in murderous conditions are kitchen knives. They're the knives in your kitchen, probably your own knife, right? So like a $5 knife that you buy at Walmart is gonna be just as good, unless you're you're super elite, super soldier commando, and you're looking to kill 85 guys this evening. For defensive purposes, your everyday steak knife probably do just fine, right? And the other thing is that if a knife is too tactical, if it looks like it was designed to kill, uh, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So some knife characteristics that do lend itself well for defensive purposes that make sense to me are things like blade length. How long is that blade, right? If the blade is long, awesome. If the blade is fat and short, I think that's cool too. I like to describe those knives as torquey knives. Um, if you can confidently open a can of beans with a knife, it's probably a torquey knife, or you've got some death wish for your fingertips. But yeah, for me, how a knife looks is infinitely more important than how it can function in a self defense condition. Now, don't take that on the extreme, right? Like, don't take that all the way to the extreme where, yeah, what I'm saying makes no sense. Why would you want a brittle, dull knife that will break? That's not what I'm saying. That's totally not what I'm saying. I'm saying for the most part, most knives are probably good enough, right? And so you ought to have like higher levels of consideration, right? Blade composition is one of those things that people are really super into. Like, people love a good quality blade made from super super expensive steel, and I love that. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Like, because blade composition is really one of the most important things for me. I love blades made of titanium, but I don't get into the D45X, whatever, Elon Musk steel, all that crap. I don't get too deep into that. But when people do, I think that's really cool. I think that's because they love metallurgy. I think they love um, chemistry. I think they love how certain rare materials make them feel. But when somebody goes, "Oh yeah, that's the kind of steel that's gonna really penetrate through bone, and you can crack a man's skull with it," I'm just like, bro, for real though, for real, right? Anyway, that's that. That's really all I wanted to share. Um, FMA, right? Can get it's easy to get cultish in FMA. It's very easy to start sounding like, faking your 1,000 yard stare and really looking at a blade and having some dark thoughts about it. I think that's just ridiculous. I think that's just ridiculous. For the most part, if, if you've got 40 knives and all of them are based upon its defensive capabilities, you're a little cuckoo to me. Sorry to say, you're a little bit nuts. All right. If you're not appreciating those beautiful pieces of art for anything other than their ability to kill another man, you're kind of wacko. You're a freaking wacko. Get your head checked. That ain't cool. So yeah, that's it. We got a bunch of comments from JTR here. I carry a folder on my primary side, nothing on the other side. All right, okay. Look, there are going to be exceptions to the rule where I'm going to sound ridiculous, right? There's gonna be that. There's gonna be the super soldier who's gonna prove me wrong, who just killed 15 guys on deployment with a knife because he was in a bad spot. There's gonna be the dude who chops wood with his knife, and he's gonna be like, "Oh, the composition of steel is actually more important than you." And I get it. Now remember, I preempted all this stuff by saying this is my opinion, and for the most part, I think uh, I think I represent most people. Um, but anyway, the number one thing is really like how that blade makes you feel, right? This whole pride of ownership and all of those things sort of fall into the umbrella of, hey, how does this knife make me feel? Because it seems that at least in the marketing sense, there's always this one-upmanship about knife capabilities, right? Like, come on, karambits are garbage, right? Like karambits are trash, but I love them. I love them. I love them not for because they're amazingly utilitarian. I don't love them because of how deep or how much deeper they can cut into flesh using equal amounts of force. Although those things, I mean, I gotta admit, cutting tests look cool. They look cool when when you see stuff like that. But hopefully, you're not really thinking about that too much. And um, this is why, like $19 knives, $19 folders from flea markets, these, or just a company who can have a lot of buying power and create a fairly decent quality knife for under $30. I think that's the money. I think that's where people should be spending their money when it comes to a quote defensive knife. One that you're not going to care all too much if you lose it in a kayaking accident. You're not going to care all too much if you have to forfeit it at a security checkpoint, right? If you forget it in your bag and you're at primary security at the airport, you're gonna be like, all right, okay, sorry, forgot I was there. Toss it. If I lost my Basinelli Red at an airport security checkpoint just because like I forgot to put it in my checked luggage and it's already passed, I would be devastated. I would be devastated to lose $300, 400,000, or a $400 knife, a $2,000 knife, right? Some Strider knives. They're these folders. I don't know if you guys have heard of Strider, but they're amazing blades, and they're like two, three, $5,000 folding knives. And that's because this dude is a genius. Strider like mixes powders and he creates these metals, and I don't know. He lights a fire and sacrifices a goat. I don't know, but it's just very cool. I would 100% pay $2,000 for a knife if it's got a cool story, if it's made of amazing quality material, if the artistry shines through in the design, right? If the blade maker is a super dope human being, I'm down to pay that. But I would hesitate to pay $50 for a knife that has none of those things. Right? I'd be like, you know what? Maybe I can find a $19 knife. Maybe I can find a $20 knife. Anyway, long story short, I think people get a little bit ridiculous with their knives. I have a buttload of knives. People send me knives all the time. I evaluate them based on what they want me to evaluate them for. And I'm going to be honest with those things, but deep down inside, I speak from a position of inexperience, right? Like, and this is another thing that we have to remember. I've never stabbed a dude to death. I've never had to use a blade to defend myself in a real deadly force encounter, a real self defense, not an ego kind of consensual fight that just escalates way too fast for its own good, and then it turns to somewhat of a possibly a justifiable self defense situation. But I haven't done that. I haven't done any of those things, right? So for me to stand here and be like, "Oh, I like this knife because I think it can," because because I can thrust and slash my way out. This is going to be easy. You ever hear these FMA guys? Oh, this knife is great. You know why? Is because once I sever the carotid artery, it's very easy to twist, pull out, cover, so I don't get any blood spurt in my mouth. There is actually an FMA video out there. I won't mention who taught it. I won't mention what system it's in, but it was just this is gross. It was like, yeah, after you slash somebody's throat, you want to check that and cover it just so that the blood spurts won't get into your mouth. You won't get AIDS or some dumb shit like that. It was dumb. It was dumb. Now, do I think there are conditions where you can have conversations about those things, where you can actually infuse it within the framework of teaching an FMA technique? Absolutely. I think there's a classy way to do it. I think there's a classy, particularly if that person is like maybe an ER nurse, or they're speaking from that framework of experience. I think that's cool. I think, if there's an ER doctor who is like, I really don't like this knife design because once you stick it in, it's going to get caught up and it's going to tear shit up on the way out. I just don't think, for the most part, the people who are like jizzing all over these blades, I actually have any idea what the hell these blades are capable of doing from first-hand perspective. And I just want to be 100% transparent, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you guys already guessed, and I'm not a killer. Pretty sure. I don't know. Sometimes it's tough, man. Like, especially when I wear my camo hats and my beard is all glorious, and I wear an FMA shirt. Maybe you guys get the wrong impression. Maybe you think I'm some sort of hardcore killer. Well, I'm not. I love the Filipino martial arts because it's part of my culture, it's part of my history. I love the challenge of executing these complex patterns. I love the deeper, more satisfying um, moment where I can execute these sophisticated movements and patterns while somebody's trying to smash my head in a stick fight or in a knife fight. I love those things, but I ain't no expert, right? I'm not like that. And the thing is, some people propose their street fighting history as I was talking with Coach Greg Nelson, which, by the way, he was a scrapper. All right, this guy was a former Division One wrestler. He is a military contractor teaching combatives. He is a fourth degree black belt in jiu-jitsu under Pedro Sauer. He does have 4 UFC champions. And the way that he kind of pokes fun at the same things that I poke fun of is quite hilarious. But I totally lost my train of thought. I was talking about badassery and people who have actually stabbed dudes. And they're just oh yeah, I was talking about people who show off about their street fights. So uh, I was in a podcast with Coach Greg Nelson and Todd Fossey, and we're talking about the kind of people that walk into the academy, right? And we were talking about those instances where these badasses walk through the academy and with this attitude of what can you possibly teach me? I've been in 300 street fights, and Greg Nelson's like, oh, so you're really good at sucker punching people? And they're like, what? Well, you've won 300 street fights. The thing with street fights is you ain't fighting anybody good. You know what I mean? Like, people really like to show off about their street fights and like their that one street fight where the knife came out, and it's the ones that I kind of the ones that are more believable, the ones that are more impressive to me are the guys who kind of downplay it. Oh, he just had this little blade, and I just took it from him. Like, what kind of little blade? How did you take it away from him? I like those stories more than the we've been drinking all night. These 4 guys came walking by. I had a look, had another sip. They pulled out their knife. They tried to stab me. I did a roof block and all that stuff. I'm like, you are not telling me the truth. Because I know under adrenalized responses and self defense conditions that memory is incredibly unreliable. And the story that you're telling is probably so disconnected from the truth that happened that I just can't believe you. There are too many details in your story. You came up with this story after the thing happened and you added these details. The guys who are like, man, I had no idea. But, you know, 1 second he had a knife. The next second I saw it on the ground. I kept punching him in the face. Like, those are the stories to me that are like, man, it makes me even want to ask more questions about it. When guys are too detailed about their knife stories, nah, it's full of shit. It's guaranteed full of shit. You know what's even more full of shit is when their students tell that story. When a student tells a story about their master's knife encounter and it's filled with like brilliant detail, I'm like, first of all, you weren't there. So you must be remembering the lie that your grandmaster told you about how this knife fight actually went down, right? I'm bringing all of this not from a position of my own experience, you guys. Like I said, I'm no badass, right? I haven't been in a knife fight. But you got to remember, I'm running this FMA channel off the off the heels of 10 years, over 10 years of working deep into the tactical industry, traveling the world, hanging out, getting drunk, running around once in a while, being in helicopters and speedboats and speeding cars, right? With some badass dudes all over the place. And, we have dinner. We start fires. We drink a lot around these fires. And I hear these stories that they said they don't have, but for some reason, when they get drunk, they all kind of flow out. So I know how these stories go, right? Um, it's kind of ironic, right? Because I'm saying that the stories I heard are more real than the stories he heard. It's very ironic, possibly even hypocritical. But in any case, I'm not talking about guys who have YouTube and Instagram accounts, who tell these stories, who post pictures of these stories. I'm talking about the people who tell these stories that you never really hear about, right? So those are the guys that I'm talking about, not the guys who have, like an online course to sell or a knife to sell. But again, I don't want to paint this broad picture about those guys either. Everybody's got to make some money. I'm not saying that anyone who has an online offering didn't do it, hasn't been there and done that. That's totally not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that within this rich tapestry of FMA, you really got to be careful about which stories you believe and do a little bit of research about the nature of memory under adrenalized responses. Oh, very unreliable. And that again goes back to us talking about why we love these knives. So when somebody is out there on YouTube land, including myself, talking about, hey, you should buy this knife for this reason or that reason, just make sure that those reasons fit within the framework of who you are. And if not, it's still okay to buy the knife because you think the knife looks cool. All I'm saying is that alone, that one thing alone, is reason enough. It's a good enough reason because you think, hey, this knife feels good in my hand. I love the way it looks. It looks really, really cool. Or I love the maker. I love the company. That's good enough. Now you can tell your wife whatever reason you want to tell her so that she won't get mad at you for buying a $300 knife. It's going to go into the camper, sweetie, and just in case a bear comes along, better see this blood groove over here. Well, when I'm stabbing a bear, you want me to be able to stab that bear more than one time, don't you, sweetie? Whatever. Do whatever you do whatever you got to do. But what I'm saying is, how it feels is good enough, and if it looks fucking cool, that's good enough, man. That's the reason why I have most of my knives is because they're cool. All right. Now, because I'm like this, guy who's got to sell knives sometimes and have people promote their knives, I have to approach those situations not for my own biases. You know what I mean? Not for my own biases. If they're going to say this is a good duty knife, then I can't really say shit. I can't because I've never been on duty with a knife. If a person says this is good for this kind of technique, I'm like, okay, I can see that. I can logically appreciate those things. But for you, for us, right, the consumer, I just, you know, you don't need 40 knives. You don't. And so I think we could all do pretty well by just appreciating the fact that, hey, man, it's okay to like a knife just because it's cool. It's okay to like a knife just because it looks kind of badass. It's okay. It's totally cool. And it's not because I'm anticipating an event where I'm going to need this and I'm going to need that extra split second to be able to recover my knife off someone's bone, right? Just don't allow yourself to get too caught up in the cultish fantasy murder play of Filipino martial arts. You know? That's it. Guys, enjoy your blades. Enjoy the crap out of your knives. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite knife makers, right? Beginning with Bastinelli Knives. This dude is so well trained in multiple martial arts, including multiple Filipino martial arts. He's incredibly artistic. I've seen his process. I've lived with him in his house. He stayed with me here in Toronto. He's one of my homeboys. And this man's his creative process is 90% of the reason why I love his blades. 90% is because I really love him as an artist. Just like you might like somebody as a musician because of their story or just something about their voice. There's something about Bastinelli knives that I really like. Recently, I like SOG again. I like SOG as a company because they've undergone this evolution from like creating these like just ugly zombie type monstrosities to getting back to basics and creating well priced, good quality knives that serve a specific sensibility and they're creating it for good people. So I like SOG. I like cold steel knives because they're freaking wackos. That Lynn Thompson guy, he's a nut job. I love him. This guy is like cutting pigs in half with katanas and slicing boar heads with sais and he's creating like ridiculously big folding knives. I love cold steel knives because they're crazy. They're crazy over there. They're creative. Uh, they're just nuts. They let their creativity run free, and they've got a buttload of buying power, which means they can produce these knives at a fairly reasonable cost. That works for me. Tops knives. I love Tops knives, right? They're sort of this special operations survival type vibe, and they stay true to that. I mean, they still create their Frankenstein monstrosities because they gotta make some money. So I love them. I love Extrema Ratio from Italy. I visited their factory. I met their president Mauro. Um, Very cool. They also produce knives for other manufacturers. I don't know if you guys knew. Did you guys know that? Did you guys know that different knife makers produce knives for other knife makers secretly? I don't know if you guys knew that. Like you can buy a Fox knife and it was made by someone else, or vice versa, vice versa. Like anyway, that happens a lot. It happens a lot. There's a lot of deals that happen in the knife making world that we are not aware of. And sometimes the knife brand that you really, really love is potentially made by a knife brand that you really really hate. That's a possibility. Mike Vellicamp, V Knives, one of the most prolific American knife designers ever. This guy's got thousands of designs, and they go under all sorts of names. If you've not heard of V Knives, VNIVES, go check them out. This guy is a creative genius at the level of someone like Bastinelli. Mike Vellicamp, Bastinelli Knives, supremely creative people. I love Fox Knives. I love Fox Knives. They've got great buying power. And I love Fox Knives because they're headquartered in a place called Magnago in Italy, which has a deep, deep history in knife making. Check it out, Magnago, Italy, and check out all the knife makers from that town. Amazing. There's I think Solingen. Solingen is another town with a rich knife making history. I think that's what it's called. It's in Germany. Um, yeah, really, really amazing. I don't want to leave anyone out. I said Tops. Jerry Hossam makes some really fantastic knives. Ken Onion makes some really amazing knives. Ken Onion is a genius. Um, Gosh, hold on. What else? That covers a good chunk of some of my. And then there are, if you guys ever go to Blade Show, which is a fantastic show, I would highly recommend that everyone go to Blade Show once. After that, it's kind of the same show. Unless you're into that whole community, um, SMD 883, Bram Frank. I like it. I like it. I guess the reason I got one of Bram's designs here, right? I think the reason that I like this knife, this Bram Frank knife, is that I can tell there's a thought behind every bit of this knife, right? The depth of these grooves. I can tell that Bram's thought about why it's going to be that. Why is the puño slanted at that precise angle? And what is this all about? You know, from the shape of the knife, it's got a lot of thought, but to be honest, I don't think they're the most beautiful knives. I don't. And if you listen to this podcast a little bit earlier, beauty is going to be my primary condition for enjoying a blade. Let's give a shout out to Bram Frank over here. This guy says, "Love his knives." That's totally cool. I right. I love that you love Bram's knives. I love that you love Bram's knives. For whatever reason, you love Bram's knives. It's a good one. I don't love Bram's knives because, well, when you slice a man's throat, the blade design is perfectly contoured to exit. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That's not why I love Bram's knives. I love it because I can see his thought process manifest into his blades. Right? Do I think they're the prettiest knives in the world? No, I don't think they're the prettiest knives in the world. But those are my conditions, right? They're not your conditions, and your conditions are probably as valid as mine, unless you're like, I don't know, like that is not an impact tool. It's not. It's just not. Um, I think when people over intellectualize certain elements of knife design and they overvalue the moment it's supposed to shine, that gets a little ridiculous to me, doesn't it? It's like, well, the reason the clip is whatever, or the reason that this blade shape is just like this is so that when you stab a dude and the bone does this. I'm just like, okay, that's dumb. That's dumb. That is dumb. You know, the reason I love this knife is, in case I jam it into someone's clavicle and I want to cut an artery on the way out. Really? Really? Okay, well, I think that's dumb. I think it's completely dumb. That's not why I love knives. Um, Talking about how many street fights was pretty cool in eighth grade. Pretty cool in ninth grade too. But once you become an adult and your seminar is about, I have a 300 knife fight in the streets of France. Okay, cool. Why are you beating up chefs? It's just not impressive. It's not impressive. You know what's more impressive? If somebody goes, you know what? I had a 3 fight MMA career. I won 2 of them. I mean, like that's impressive. One professional MMA fight is way more impressive than 300 street fights. Come on. At least it shows me that you were dedicated to something and put a lot of hard work into pursuing, a goal. 300 street fights just means you're a fucking douchebag and probably didn't probably weren't raised properly, and so you got into all these street fights. I mean, it just makes me question your life choices, to be honest. Okay, old man still can. Once again, bro, I love your name. Good stuff. I would love to buy a lot of knives, and there are a lot of great looking knives up there. But honestly, I lose stuff often. Me too. Me too. I don't lose knives. I misplace them. Like for the longest time, I couldn't find my red folder, and it was in a fucking tackle box in my kayak. Sorry, Bastian, but I do use the red folder. My EDC is and always will be the Wartac for a few reasons. Number one is the handle; it just fits my hands very well, or fits my hands well. Awesome. Wartac is Kelly Warden's design, right? Cool. Um, for me, someone like a Datu Kelly Warden, I he treads that line for me because he's a very artistic and deep person. He's very philosophical. He is like if a biker gang enforcer had a kung fu master. That's kind of Datu Kelly Warden for me. He's an amazing human. But some of his designs are like, wow, that's just beautiful. And he'll make it out of a beautiful handle, and he'll tell me that the outline of the left edge is supposed to be the devil or like an angel holding a trident. I'm like, that's fucking dope. And then he'll show me one. It's like, this one's murdery. I'm like, let's go back to the devil angel profile. So again, and hey, you're allowed to be multi-dimensional as a knife maker, right? I don't know how well that's going to work for your marketing where, one time you're like super tactical and the next it's you're like, hey, I ate some shrooms yesterday and I made, you know, Galaxy 8 knife that represents how we're all one. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about. For some reason, it turned into 42 minutes. You know what I'm trying to do? Why these damn podcasts are so long? It's because I go on tangents, number one. Number two, I'm trying to get my audience, I'm trying to get this channel monetized. And there are two conditions to do that. One is you got to have over 1,000 subscribers. So thank you all very much for helping me cross that first and initial threshold. The other one is I have to generate like 4,000 minutes of watch time. 4,000 minutes is a lot. So I make these podcasts a little bit longer. I also like chilling with you guys. It is a Saturday early evening here in Toronto, and I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it. I love the fact that people watch this. Usually a few hundred people watch it. I'm very grateful for all of you, even the ones that are like they're just watching me so that they can post about some dumb shit that I said. Well, congratulations. There's tons of that here. No, but I'm really grateful for that. So, on that note, I'm not going to make this too long. I'm not really saying a whole lot right now. Kind of just hanging out with you guys. But thank you. Let's see. That sale you had with 200 Jared Wihongi's folder was badass. $10 for a super cool knife with a poly trap. Yeah. So if you guys don't know what he's talking about, you guys can go to app. I know this website is so hard to spell. If you guys can spell, go to aperturefightfocus.com. and go check out what Old Man Still Can is talking about, and that's Jared Wihongi's signature series knives. They're super affordable. Yeah, I think the the most cheapo one is something like 19.99. I think, yeah, when it was on sale for like $10. And there's a few reasons why I love that. One, Jared's my homeboy. Two is it's got like Maori inspired designs, right, honoring his lineage. But man, the dude put a Filipino sun in each one, and I'm like, oh, bro, man, touching my heart a little bit. So the art on those blades are absolutely gorgeous. The Wihongi signature series blades are really, really cool. Check them out at aperturefightfocus.com. And the other reason is that they're actually made from decent material, and that's because Browning makes them. Browning. So again, buying power is everything. Browning's got a lot of buying power, so they can buy good material a lot cheaper than you and I could buy material. So yeah, that's why I like those knives, right? And again, I don't like the Wihongi signature series. Like one of them's a kukri. I gotta use a kukri. One of them is a tomahawk. I don't need a tomahawk, but I would love to own that tomahawk because of the design is cool and the damn thing just looks really, really cool. Um, on aperturefightfocus.com, we actually acquired a whole bunch of DEFCON 5 knives, which are like these like super affordable blades. I think the cheapest one is like $14. And these are the knives I'm talking about. Like you lose a $14 knife, no big deal. And I think they tried their damnedest to appease some of the sensibilities out there. You like a Warncliffe, you like a Tonto, you like a Spear Point. Like people have their preferences, and so when you have a company like DefCon who can cater to all those differences and keep the prices really, really affordable, why not? Why not? Not every knife that you own is going to be a Strider or a Bastinelli or a Ken Onion knife. Like that's crazy. That's crazy talk. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think, here's a question for you. Do you guys think that knives are an investment? Because I know a lot of gun people who collect firearms, like they hoard firearms. And it's like a hedge against inflation. It's like an asset to them, right? So they're collecting these assets by way of firearms. And I thought that was crazy until I didn't think it was crazy. Until I realized, holy crap, these guns absolutely do hold their value. Number one, they don't lose their value like they would a vehicle as soon as you buy it, right? In fact, the older a gun gets, and when you test it out, it's still reliable. That's a really great sign that you've got a quality product, right? Like here's a gun that's 20, 30 years old, right? Some mid-tech mass produced gun, but it's discontinued now, and it's made of great material, and it's got 15,000 rounds through it, and still shoots like a breeze. That's going to hold its value. So I don't know if knives do that, right? I don't know if knives do that. I know there are certain sub communities within the knife world where just these wacko dudes would just buy every knife that their favorite designer makes. And that's cool, right? They like it for a good reason. They like the band, they like the music, so they buy the knife. I love that. That's cool. But I'm like, wow, man, that's a lot of money. But I wonder if they hold their value. I wonder if, towards their retirement, they want to sell these knives. If these knife maker brands or these knife maker personal brands are gonna hold value. You buy a $300-400 Bassinelli knife today. Is that going to be worth the same amount, if not more money, 20, 30, 40 years from now? I don't really know. I'm not really versed in that world. But when I do go to Blade Show, I see some knives that are like $20,000. So there's got to be something to it. Clearly samurai swords, these katanas that belong to General blah 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 and was used in World War II. I know those things hold value, but I just wonder if the knives that we're buying today, for all the knife collectors, if they hold value. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Are any of you guys collecting knives as an investment and not just saying it's an investment so your wife don't kill you? So let me know. I just realized I'm wearing the same shirt you are, but mine is black and has a blood groove. Your shirt has a blood groove. What's your? Yeah, look at that. Picada University. Love Picada University. I'm biased though. I made a lot of those videos. I filmed a lot of those videos, I should say. But anyway, thank you guys again for joining me. I might do another podcast later on. I think I need to schedule this because it's usually like live, like the maximum anyone would be here in a row. By the way, I didn't put this up on Facebook, but when I do, it's usually like 10 to 15 people. But there's a few that show up frequently, and then some that are like there's like two groups of people that show up, and maybe if I scheduled them, we can have both of those groups, and then I'll have 20 people join. Um, but the more subscribers I have, the more you guys hit that like button. Please don't hit the like button because you think I'm super awesome or that this podcast offers like a tremendous value to the community right now. Don't do it for that, but do hit that like button just kind of as a favor, because I'm gonna make these things better. I'm working on this stuff. I'm working on this FMA channel. I'm gonna dish out some good content. But when you hit that like button, YouTube goes, "Hey, this guy likes FMA and tactical stuff, and then he just liked this video off this FMA source. So maybe we'll go feed it to people who are just like him, and more people get to see these videos, and I get more views. One day, I get to monetize it so that when I'm out here, my wife doesn't give me dirty looks about, oh, you're wasting your time again with that FMA stuff." All right. So please hit that like button just as a favor to me for now. Um, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Again, not because the channel is like super duper amazing at this stage. You're kind of believing in me, right? You're kind of believing in the vision of the founder, that I'm going to make something out of this channel and I'm going to use it to benefit everybody. So I'm like that stock. I'm like a penny stock right now, boys. Just a penny stock. But you invest today, then you can tell your grandkids, "Oh yeah, I was subscribed to FMA Source back when it only had under 2,000 subscribers." They're probably not going to do that, but whatever. Please, please, I'm begging you. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that like button. Um, Maybe even hit that notification bell so you get notified next time I go on. But anyway, thank you guys very much for joining FMA Source. My name is Paulo Rubio GN. Some people call me. Stands for Gun Noob, by the way. Gun Noob, self-deprecating name. Thought I'd give myself one of those. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate all of you. And for the people who comment and like meet me up here, one day I have to meet you in person. Be like, "Hey, I'm old man still can." I'd be like, "Old man, holy shit!" You know what I mean? Or like, "I'm JTR. You're JTR, motherfucker. Fuck, come here, give me a big hug." Yeah. So one day I hope to get to meet all of you, motherfuckers, and we're gonna have a grand old time. Let me go buy you a beer, some French fries, or a water bottle from the seminar that we're in that costs $4. Uh, but I'm looking forward to meeting some of you guys. Hopefully, this COVID shit is over real soon. I can't wait to fight again and spar again and to train broadly again. Something that we all miss. Thank you guys. I love y'all. Peace. Thank you. And I'll see you guys next time. Okay? Like button.